This is Ray Mofield with the Oral History Microphone, and today we're pleased to be visiting in the home of Derrell King. Derrell lives at 115 20th Street in Benton, Kentucky. He's been a Marshall County citizen for a long, long time, but we'll let him tell his own story as we ask a few questions here and there. Derrell, thank you for letting us come over.
Yes, sir.
Where did you begin life? Were you a Callaway Countian or Tennessean?
No, I was born in Missouri.
Missouri.
Southeast Missouri.
Well, tell me, for my curiosity, I guess you've told me 100 times, but I keep forgetting. How were you related to Lowell King?
Well, he's my uncle, and he was in grocery business over Murray, and I came to Benton. I bought his store out here in the old U-Totem store out here in Benton.
I was going to ask you about U-Totem. I remember that store at Murray, and your uncle and one of my neighbors worked for him for a long time, a fellow named Raymond Alexander.
Yeah, Raymond, and he had a brother over there named Lawton.
Lawton ran a grocery somewhere in Murray.
Yeah, Lawton worked for my Uncle Lowell over there for several years, and then he put his own store in after my uncle went out of business over there.
Now, Clarence Saunders, back in the 20s, had invented the idea of the self-service grocery. Nobody had ever heard of it, but in Memphis, he put up a store and called it the Piggly Wiggly. And, of course, it became a great success, and later he went bankrupt, though, as many people did in the Depression. His home, the Pink Palace, is now a city museum in Memphis, and that first store, that first Piggly Wiggly with all of its fixtures and the prices that were current in about 1922.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah,
it's very interesting. You ought to go see it sometime.
Yeah, I'd
but
like to.
I guess your uncle maybe got the idea from Saunders, or anyway he'd heard of self-service.
Well, yeah, that was later on, actually, when he got into self-service. Just about the time he's getting ready to go out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you were born in Missouri, and what part of the state?
I lived in Advance, Missouri, southeast Missouri. It was about 25 miles west of Cape Girardeau.
Mm-hmm. And your father was Lowell King's brother.
Otto King.
I see Lowell King every now and then. Saw him about 6 months ago at Murray, and he still looks good.
Yeah, he's had a birthday back in January. He's 86 years old.
Well, is it fair to ask you if you're about 65 or so?
I'm 68.
Mm-hmm. Well, where did you go to school? In Advance?
Well, I went to school there in Missouri, and then when I moved to Tennessee, I was interrupted during the war.
Mm-hmm.
I went in World War II. I was in the Navy. I was on a heavy cruiser called USS Portland. And then when I got out of service, I went to business college in Paris, Tennessee for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the extent of my education.
Did you ever go to a one-room country school?
No,
never did.
I think this country school I was in was about a three-room deal.
3 rooms? Yeah. Oh, you went
had
to
eight grades in it.
Big town.
Oh, yeah.
Well, now the one-room school I went to had 8 grades in it.
It did, one room.
Yeah. I wonder now how the teacher ever lived through a bunch of knotheads like myself.
Yeah, I wonder too.
Well, you must have been interested in business as a fairly young man since you went to business college.
Yes, I was. I'd already worked for my uncle in McKenzie, Tennessee. His name was Glenn King, and he was the one that started a U-Totem chain.
Oh, he started it, and it wasn't Lowell.
No, it wasn't Lowell, but Lowell come in later.
I always thought it was Lowell King.
No.
He was the first one at Murray, and of course, back then, Murray and Hardin's the only 2 towns I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
How big did that empire get? How many stores did they have?
They had at one time 41 stores in Tennessee and Kentucky.
That was a big operation.
Pretty big operation. Uh-huh.
It surely was, at least by my standards. Now, I suppose if you're talking about A&P or something like that,
No,
it'd be
small comparison to
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
All right. So you were in the war. You were on a heavy cruiser, Portland. That ship saw action in the Pacific, did it?
Yes. It went all through the Pacific, and nearly all actions over there, nearly all battles. I think they was in 16 battles,
Mm-hmm.
and major battles,
Yes, sir.
and I was in 14 of them.
Boy, you just about started and ended, didn't you?
Nearly.
Well, those were terrible times, and I'm glad they're over.
Yeah.
But we certainly owe a lot to people like yourself and others who went and served. The Navy wrote a lot of wonderful history, and in many ways, the Battle of Midway and the Coral Sea, and of course helping the Marines land at Guadalcanal and many other places.
Yes, and the Marines is. I don't know whether the average person realizes it or not, but the Marines should get more, should have got a lot of credit in the Pacific War because they went in ahead of everybody. We supported them with gunfire to soften up the beaches from the land, but I mean they went in ahead of everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and the Army followed them, see?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of Marines killed over there.
Yes, sir. Well, that's a picture that I remember all too well. You know, they're building a Navy memorial in Washington, and they're trying to get everybody's name that served in World War II engraved on a big plaque up there.
That'll be a big thing, wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
it surely would. You ought to see that your name gets on that.
I'll check into that.
I served a short time, 16 months in the Navy in World War II, and anyway, my name's been sent in, so you ask me about it after it's over, and I'll send in your name if you
All
want
right.
to.
All
Okay.
right.
Well, let's see. You got out of business college, and you weren't married while you were in the Navy, were you?
No.
Where did you meet your wife?
In McKenzie, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a beautiful little town. I
Yes,
taught a
it
class at McKenzie Bethel College there a few years ago. Taught a public relations course for the Chamber of Commerce. Businessmen there asked me to come in, and the radio station there, WKTA, I believe it was, FM,
Yeah, I believe
sponsored
that's
it.
right. I believe that's right.
Mike Freeland was, and Jim Freeland's
Yeah,
brother.
I knew them Freeland, some of them.
Yeah. So it's a very pleasant town, very beautiful city, progressive.
That's a nice little college there too, isn't it? It's
Yes,
growing.
it really
Growing.
is. It was great. And your wife's name was what?
Evelyn Hickerson.
Mm-hmm. Was her father in the grocery business?
No, but he was a carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
But my wife was raised in McKenzie, Tennessee, born and raised in McKenzie.
Mm-hmm. Well, what finally drew you to Marshall County?
Well, my uncle was getting ready to thinking about retiring, and so they invited me to come up to Benton and see if I wanted to try this little store we had up here on the square at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I agreed, and I'm glad I did. I really like it here in Benton. It's a
Mm-hmm.
great place.
Well, now, you have, you and your brother, how many of you are in this King Brothers now?
Well, now, me and my brother sold out to my two sons,
Mm-hmm.
and it's Ronnie and Ted King as partners.
Mm-hmm.
by themselves.
So we've got another generation.
Another
of Kings.
generation, yeah. I hope they can carry it on along for
A long
long time.
Well, that every now and then begins to frighten me just a little bit. I can often pick out freshman students in the fall at Murray State, and I'll say to them, what's your name? And they give me a name, and I say, well, you're from Possum Trot. I know the name. And then I call a name and ask, are you so-and-so's daughter or son? They say, no, that's my grandfather. So the King brothers that I knew are retired.
Right.
Well, tell us what year you did that.
That was February 1950, and I retired after my 36th year in business here in Marshall County.
Mm-hmm. 1950. That's to the young generation, that seems like a long, long time ago. It doesn't seem all that long to me. But
Me neither.
And you had the store. Was there how long did it take you to open a store out at Graffinville?
Well, in 1952, we bought and opened a store at Graffinville where the old VFW place was out there,
Mm-hmm.
or American Legion, rather.
Yeah.
And
That was a big two-story building, wasn't it?
yes, it was.
You had a lot of room in that place, but of
Had
course,
living quarters upstairs and the grocery downstairs.
Mhm. Well, that made it real convenient, I suppose. But I wonder, did it sort of interfere with family life a bit?
Well, it did. My oldest brother lived upstairs. And,
Somebody
it's too handy there. For
Yeah.
everybody knocking on the door wanting to
Yeah, open up.
open up. Yes.
Yeah, I've thought of that. That's kind of like preachers living next door to the church building. They're wide open for everybody
Real
all the time.
Convenient.
Yeah. Now you have a beautiful new brick building there now that was originally a hardware store, was it?
It's a metal building.
A metal building.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it was
Ace Hardware.
the Ace Hardware store, and they decided to get out and sold to us.
Mm-hmm. I remember when that happened, but I can't tell you exactly how long ago it was. It's been 5, 6, 7, or 8 years by now.
It's been about 5 years. Yeah.
Mhm. All right, you started in Benton in 1950. Well, how long did it take you to get used to the county? How long had you been in the grocery business when you started here?
Well, I'd worked for my uncle in a managed store down in Tennessee before I came up here. Of course, I'd worked in the warehouse, and that's about all I ever done in my life. See, was
Mm-hmm.
is to work in and around the grocery business.
So you more or less grew up in it,
Right.
and you'd had business college on top of that.
Right.
And do you find that the education was valuable to you?
Yes, it was. Sure was.
So today there's so many rules and regulations and
Yeah.
taxes and so on that you nearly have to have a
More and
business
more all
background
the time. That's right.
to keep up with the. Do you have to worry about pure food and drug and OSHA and environmental protection and all those things? Or?
Well, we have in the past, but
Mhm.
they hadn't bothered us in recent years, really.
They have-
Sometime we'll have to yank something off the shelf if they think there's a little something wrong, you know.
Yeah.
But
Some canning company somewhere will have a particular batch, and I
Yeah.
know I hear them come on the radio and say, if you bought
certain batch
Hormel
number,
beef
you know,
number
yeah.
so and so,
Yeah.
canned in Austin, Minnesota, in thus and such a month. Why,
Pull it off.
pull it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that keeps you on your toes all the time.
Yes, it's a good thing. That health thing is a real good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Without that, I suppose people would be uninformed, and there'd be more illness, more sickness, and so on than there is today.
Yes.
All right, now your sons just have the 2 stores at this time
Yes.
here in Marshall County. Well, that's very good. When did you drop the name U Totem?
Well, at the time they sold the chain out, they sold out to Malone and Hyde
Mm-hmm.
out of Tennessee, and of course, when they dropped that, we went to King Brothers because there was a franchise name, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Malone and Hyde, I believe they're headquartered in Memphis now.
Yes.
And isn't that one of America's largest independent, or whatever you call them, independent, I guess would be the word.
Yeah. In other words, it's a company. It's not a stock market stock-holding company.
Do they actually own any stores themselves, or they just supply wholesale?
Yes and no. They own a lot of stores of their own where they bought out a whole chain, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But they eventually try to sell them off to some of their customers that's already in business, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But that gives them some much bigger buying power, you know. And actually they've grown really too big, you know, to suit me, really.
Now, the American business, from automobiles to you name it, has gone to the large conglomerate form, and that gives them economies of scale, as the economics professors like to talk about. I guess it would be pretty hard for the old general store that my dad knew as a boy out at Olive, say, to operate just by picking up odds and ends at a little wholesale house in Murray.
Yes,
or
it would. In fact, it's not very few little wholesale houses anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Nearly all
They
big
simply
stuff.
cannot compete, can they?
No, that's true. That's true.
Well, I was talking to a fellow over in Illinois the other day, and he was telling me that he's in right on the Ohio River, and it's at the tail end of the distribution areas, and he said that a lot of the wholesalers will no longer deliver to him.
That's true. Yeah,
He's
I've
kinda
heard that.
the end of the line, and in order to get stock, he has to, say, drive his own truck up to Harrisburg and meet that supplier and load it up and take it back. Now,
Yeah, that's tough, isn't it?
Mhm.
I mean, that's hard on a small store like
it
that.
really would be. Of course, that increases the cost of operation
Yes.
quite a bit. And then I guess his customers wonder why his prices have to be higher than the big store in Harrisburg
Right.
would be.
Right. Yeah.
So it's tough to stay competitive in that kind of a market. Well, let's get back to your wife a minute. You were married, and do you have any children?
I've got 4 children. I got 2 boys and 2 girls.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think I know one of your girls is Janie.
Janie King, it lives at Murray.
Mm-hmm. Married Sammy.
Married Sammy Parks.
Sammy Parker, and they have a radio station.
Yes, sir.
She kind of grew up in the grocery business too, didn't she?
Yes, she did. Yeah.
And Sammy grew up.
Sammy grew up. His daddy's in the grocery business too.
Well, they ought to get along pretty well as
They
far as their
should.
backgrounds are concerned. And then you have the 2 boys. Now, the other girl, does she live in Benton?
No, she lives in Murray.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Ted King. Ted King, my son, lives in Murray, and my 2 daughters lives in Murray.
Mm-hmm.
And my son, Ronnie King, lives here in Benton.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know that Sammy and Janie have some children.
They have 3 girls.
Yeah. So that gives you 3 grandchildren. You got any
And
more?
then Ted King and his wife's got 2 girls.
Mm-hmm.
And Ronnie King here in Benton's got my only grandson.
The only
My only
grandson.
grandson.
Well, now listen. If you said a while ago you'd like for that King name to keep going, and
That's right. We need another boy at least.
if you're going to keep King Brothers on it,
That's right.
you have to come up with another one there somewhere. Well, that's fine. Now, have you tell us something about the changes that you've seen since you came to Benton, and in the community or the grocery business, or?
Well, when I first came to Benton, there was 3 stores on the square. There's Mars and Elkins and Kroger and you told them. And then there's Mr. Hunt was down on Main Street.
Mm-hmm. Clark
and,
Hunt.
Clark Hunt, that's
Mhm.
right.
I remember him.
And we was all small outfits. And then wasn't long till Marshall Austin bought out Kroger store. So
Kroger started closing in small towns, didn't they? Just
at that time,
got
yes,
out
yes,
of a lot of the little towns.
right.
In fact, I think for a while they didn't even have a store in Murray or Mayfield there.
No, that's right. They was out there for a while. It's true.
So you were then 100% locally owned, weren't you?
Right, right. All of us independent stores around here at that time.
Yeah. And were you back then aligned with some wholesaler like Malone and Hyde, or you just?
We went with Ragland and Potter out of Jackson, Tennessee at that time.
Mhm.
And it wasn't about a year or two till Malone and Hyde bought them out. And we've been with Malone and Hyde ever since.
Mhm. Yeah. Now, one of their brand names is Hyde Park.
Hyde Park, that's their main brand name, yes, sir.
Now, in the meantime, then we've, I guess, if you think of the whole county, of course, Calvert was a very small town then. It's kept growing. Then you had the IGA people, Independent Grocers Alliance. Is there a chain store in the county now?
Yes, Sureway down at Calvert City.
That's
chain
right.
store,
That's right. I'd sort of forgotten about them.
And then we also have IGA out here at the shopping plaza, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're kind of a semi-chain, semi-home-owned arrangement, franchise.
It's franchise. A whole lot of it is. They have some stores of their own, but just most of their company is franchise. Way I understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. What about the business you did back then compared to now? You have a lot more competitors, but then the population of the county since 1950, I guess, has almost tripled.
Yes, I'd say so. The whole county is rule, yeah.
So there's more business now, I guess, than there was then.
A whole lot more business. Of course, tourist lake resorts out here built up a lot since then.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when I came to town, there wasn't but just a very few. Mr. Moore out here and Mr. Arnie Baker, but that's all. Lake area's growed up so much. We get a lot of business off the lake area.
Oh, I was going to ask you if you could tell any difference between summer and winter.
Yes, summer business is better on account of the lake business, really.
Now, about 30, 40 years ago, when I first went into broadcasting, I remember interviewing a grocer, and the fellow said that he he liked summer, but it hurt him awful bad. When the gardens came in, he didn't sell much.
Yes, that was in the old days, like when I first came to Benton.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we'd readied them gardens too, but now it doesn't seem to make much difference.
Well, so many of us don't have gardens anymore, and I guess the ones that do have more money to spend, and they.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I suppose that when you take all of these cottages that are filled at the state parks and the private ones like Ken Bar and around, there are a lot more people buying groceries in the summer in Marshall County, aren't there?
I think so, yes. Uh-huh. Of course, the campers or the campgrounds, see, we get pretty good grocery business from those folks from Illinois and Indiana and different places.
Yeah. There are quite a number of camping spots in the county too, aren't there?
Yes, they are. Nearly most of the resorts over here has got some camping area too. See.
Mm-hmm. Well, very good. That's so the business then is even greater now, and I've just thought about how that has reversed over the years. When the Kentucky Wonders used to come in, why it hurt the hurt the local grocery stores.
That's true.
But now you even increase in size.
The summer business is better than in winter.
We've increased in just about everything except, well, Shelby McCallum's movie theater's gone. But
Yeah, yeah, we're missing that.
television did some damage, didn't it?
I think so, yeah.
I read an article the other day that said between 1950 and 1960 that 6,000 movie theaters went out of business.
That's a lot of them.
So that hurt the exhibitors anyway. Of course, the people in the studios are making all the TV shows.
Yes, yeah.
It doesn't matter with them, I guess, who shows them as long as they get paid for it.
Right.
Well, what do you see in the way of big changes in the merchandising field, perhaps the grocery business with which you're most familiar? Well, I noticed one thing that's been a big change, I suppose, and that's the amount of frozen food.
Yes, that's grown tremendously in the last few years, really.
When I used to go to Totem, they didn't know what frozen food was
No.
in 1930.
No, and we didn't have much meat merchandise either.
No.
We had the slab bacon and hog jaw and the old hook cheese.
Once in a while, about once a year, if we got a lot of extra money, we'd go to Schroet's Meat Market.
Yeah, yeah.
And get a little piece of beef.
Good fresh beef over there. I'm not so sure just whether it was really fresh or not.
Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of fun interviewing you, and we've got about a minute and a half left. Do you think of any funny incidents that have happened that you could afford to tell over the years? Or?
Well, I don't know. Some happened, but right offhand, I can't recall them. I might think of one that wouldn't be supposed to say on the air or something like that.
Yeah. What about your most embarrassing moment? Have you ever got caught in a...
Well,
I heard a story about a woman came in one time and asked a grocer for a chicken. She said, "Oh, that's too little." And so that's the only one he had. So he brought it back out again, and she said, "That one's just right, and I'll take both of them."
yeah.
Now, that would have been embarrassing.
That would have been embarrassing right there. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Derrell King. It's been a pleasure to visit your house, meet you and your wife, and to learn that you are, I guess, enjoying retirement.
Yes, sir. Sure am. Sure am. We're getting out and doing a little traveling, and we're getting ready to go to Las Vegas this end of this month. We're having a ship reunion out there.
Well, great. You'll get to see some of your buddies from World War II.
Yes, and we've been doing that now pretty regular since we've all getting older, because some of them been dying out.
Just don't stay at those tables too long.
Oh, no. I don't. Be around there.
All right. Well, this is Ray Mofield, and we've been interviewing Derrell King, a retired grocer whose two sons are carrying on the King Brothers Grocery in Marshall County, and we hope that will continue for many, many years. We return you now to our studios.